All right. Sarah, you have the floor.
Yay. Thank you all for joining. If anyone is online virtually, I have dropped the PowerPoint link into the chat if that is helpful. Otherwise, we're here to talk about economic development. And as I was putting this together, there really is a lot we could cover and only have an hour. So I'm going to go through some things pretty quickly, but just want to kind of plant some seeds and give you some ideas of some different things that we're looking at and to be able to get your feedback on. And then we can definitely revisit things at future dates as well as we go. So our hope today is to just talk about, Fraser's downtown is growing. What kind of messaging do we want around that? Do we want this to be an open invitation to businesses to please come talk to us? Do we want to offer some level of economic incentives? So I'm going to try to start by talking about what has happened in the past, some of the initiatives that are currently going on in Fraser that I see as integral pieces connected to economic development. Spend some time looking at what some of our neighboring peer communities, different communities around Colorado are doing, and use that as a basis for discussion of things that we might want to consider as we think about economic development as it relates to Fraser. So. All right. So I want to start with the 2017 Downtown Fraser Strategic Plan. I know a lot of times there's grumblings that the town spends a lot of money on studies and plans, and we don't actually realize anything from these plans or utilize these plans. But I've looked at this plan quite a bit. It's been integral to different grant applications that we've applied for and grant funding that we've actually received. And we actually do have a lot of different things that are going on that I think have come from the goals of these plans. So there were 5 areas that this plan really focused on in terms of goals for downtown Fraser. Developing a vibrant town center that serves as a focal point for the community and attracts visitors to stop. Preserving and building upon Fraser's fun, eclectic character, keeping that Fraser funkiness. Developing a diverse and resilient local economy that supports locally owned and operated businesses and fosters entrepreneurship. Increasing mobility choices from getting around town on foot to regional travel via mass transit, and then expanding and diversifying local housing options. So one of the items that's definitely come out of this is the Riverwalk District. That has been rezoned last year in 2023 to create a mixed-use neighborhood that capitalizes on its adjacency to the Fraser River. That was one of the focuses of the plan. And so with that rezoning, we are requiring ground floor commercial along Clayton Court and Highway 40. There's also the offer of density bonuses for people that include affordable housing as part of building that happens there. We've received $1.5 million from Main Street Live to put infrastructure into Clayton Court. So that has been being designed as we speak. I think we're actually going to be presenting at the retreat on an initial design that we have from Merrick for that. But hopefully you'll be breaking ground on that later this summer. And then the Fraser Creative Arts Center that is being actively fundraised for and really seen as a potential anchor for this community. So the board has donated land to that on the north end of Clayton Court, right along the Fraser River. But we really see that as a way to help diversify our economy and attract people to our downtown. So we're envisioning a vibrant, mixed use, really pedestrian friendly kind of heart of downtown Fraser. And that through this effort, we can hopefully kind of revitalize and bring business to all of Fraser. Additionally, some other things going on. Obviously, the Downtown Development Authority that passed in April is going to be a huge piece of economic development in Fraser. We really see this organization as being a champion for downtown, a way to engage residents and citizens. We're super excited to have so many applications for the board, which we'll be looking at later this evening. And then just being able to have a dedicated revenue source that we know we can pour into developing downtown in the years to come, I think is going to be really key. Alongside this, we are also engaging in a new town comprehensive plan that is just now getting kicked off. So we see that as also being an additional way to provide direction for downtown and economic development. and that plan of development that the DDA will be using will be linked very closely with that comprehensive plan. Victoria Village is another aspect that came out of that 2017 Downtown Fraser Strategic Plan, and I think is super integral to economic development. As I looked at other communities, you have a lot of communities doing things to try to create jobs for the community. And I think where Fraser's at right now, we are trying to provide a way for the businesses that are here to actually employ people in the openings that they have. So providing affordable housing, I think, is going to be key. It's also going to provide additional year-round customers for our businesses. And given their proximity to downtown and the service of the lift, I think also really fits into that pedestrian-friendly multimodal goal that we saw in the 2017 plan. The last one I'm going to throw out is a little bit different. It was not in the downtown strategic plan, but came out of the master plan for the Fraser River corridor in the Lions Pond area. But I do see the bike park initiative and everything else we're looking to do there to build that out as being an additional economic driver. Obviously, it will be a free recreational amenity, but really just as a way to kind of provide a gateway to Fraser to bring people here and give them a reason to spend more time within town, and then hopefully also spend some money in our local businesses before or after hitting the pump track. So a lot going on. What we want to focus on today is within this context, how do we best support our current businesses and how do we best attract additional businesses? So thinking about what our messaging and branding might be, a lot of places focus on this idea, Fraser's open for business, Fraser's growing, join with us, help keep Fraser funky, how can you contribute? So really kind of thinking about messaging and branding, and what we want to put out there for businesses that may be looking at different places to establish themselves and potentially having Fraser in the mix for them. And then just talking about different resources and innovative ideas that we can offer. Please feel free to stop me at any time with questions. We do have discussion at the end, but it's a lot of information before then. So I'm happy to take questions and things as we go. So one of the things that we see is kind of low-hanging fruit. Our economic development page on the website is currently pretty outdated. It's got some basic information. It still kind of focuses on COVID. So we've got some draft versions that are not yet published, but working on really, again, creating an inviting message, providing more economic data for Fraser and Grand County that businesses are seeking, trying to work more with our partners, Grand County Economic Development, the Chamber, to have that data available for businesses that may be looking at locating here. We'll obviously link to the Downtown Development Authority, and as that gets going, different initiatives and projects that they'll be working on, the plan of development, trying to feature the Riverwalk District and the Main Street Initiative, making sure we have a one-stop shop for things like business licenses, short-term rental, liquor licenses, a list of resources for different businesses and getting started, information on our business enhancement grant. If we do want to offer economic incentives, having all of that there. And then also ready to launch, I think Sarah said next week, possibly, is the new Explore Fraser website. So Sarah Wick has been working to kind of rebrand and pretty up the tourism side of our website that's meant to attract and provide information for visitors versus the more government side. And that also provides a nice directory for the local businesses. So in terms of different information that we can provide, I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, but we do Grand County Economic Development. The county works with Datify, and we have access to that data. So it can provide a lot of information on the number of visitors that we have coming. So this is Fraser looking at visitors between 2022 and I believe through last month, 2024. So who's coming to Fraser? How long are they staying? Who are the unique visitors? We can look at where they're coming from. And I apologize, this is a little hard to read, but approximately 75% of our visitors are from Colorado. So a lot of people coming from in-state. The next largest state demographic by far is Texas at 6.7%. They can look at daily visitor trends. And so seeing how visitor trends compare month over month. So 2024 is this light blue line that you see for the first part of it. And as you can see, we were kind of steady with 2023. but did have some lower visitation in here between kind of March and April compared to previous years. And then again, it's been pretty steady and in line with previous years, the last couple months. Sales tax revenue by month. This is taken from Lori's treasurer report that she presented at the last town board meeting. But again, just trying to help have all this information in a central place and having us better use it to look at economic development and what makes sense for Fraser. So 2024 is this blue line that was higher in February. And again, these are 2 months back. So this would actually be December sales tax revenue. But that it has dropped off a bit this year in comparison to 2023.
It was 2024, the lowest line, when you look at the right.
When you look at it, so it's this blue one. So up here, it's not the lowest line. It's still higher than 2022, 2021, and 2020. But there are spots where it does dip below 2024. And then the last bit of data I'll show at you is just looking at sales tax revenues year over year. So we've had a lot of years with really significant sales tax growth. That's provided a lot of revenue for the town. It's allowed us to engage in a lot of important initiatives that we've had funding for. We can see that in 2023, that was a much smaller growth than we've had in more recent years. So I think that's important to keep in mind, comparing that to visitation, what exactly that means.
Sure.
The Colorado Association of Ski Towns puts out a report and they compare various ski towns with this data and information. And this is a trend that's being seen across the state. A number of communities actually had a decrease in sales tax revenue last year. So Fraser is very much in line. We're doing better than some communities. It is still an increase, but not as much of an increase as we've previously had. Any questions about any of this?
In 19, there was a big jump in revenue. Is that did they increase the sales tax from 18 to 19?
I think that's when they made online purchases taxable to where you're going.
Okay, that's what it was,
Yeah.
like Amazon and stuff. Okay.
Yeah, and I know Amazon is one of our largest sales tax revenue sources. So again, wanted to provide you a little bit of this information, and also just kind of examples of the type of data that we are looking to kind of have available and more prominently found on our website. Providing some different resources for business, locally, the Chamber of Commerce, Grand County Economic Development, Northwest Council of Government has a lot of information for small businesses. They do some small business loans. And then there's a lot of great resources out there as well, just for smaller businesses, newer businesses trying to get up off the ground. Grand Enterprise Initiative is a local group that will provide free one-on-one consulting. So that's a great resource. And then a lot of these other ones have kind of online modules and things like that that can help businesses develop business plans. But any other resources out there that you think would be good to put in front of our businesses, please feel free to share those. And then obviously, once again, the Downtown Development Authority is going to be intersecting with all of this. And I think it's important that we think about kind of what their role is and how exactly they do intersect. Some of that will come with the plan of development. Obviously, this does not encompass the whole area of commercial development and retail within Fraser, but it is a good chunk of it. And so it is going to be a really big piece of it. So as we think about what we can do to help better support current businesses as well as attracting new businesses, I wanted to start with what we are currently offering. So we do have the Fraser Business Enhancement Grants. A business can request up to $7,500. They are required to provide a 50% match. Currently, we just accept those on a rolling basis. And I think we've largely, for the most part, given them to most businesses, if not all, that have requested them over the last few years. But they're meant to improve curb appeal. So facade improvements, things like patios, landscaping. And this is a similar program to what a lot of communities have, with the idea that if our business, if an individual business looks better, that improves the curbside appeal of our entire downtown. So really focusing again on kind of those exterior improvements. These are just some of our different business enhancement grant recipients that we've had over the last few years. So we've got Fraser River Beer Company, Black Tie Ski Rentals, Camber, Vicious Cycle, Grand Valley, Fraser Valley Distilling, Winter Park Winery, Azteca, and Fishers. And then in terms of what's been offered to new businesses, we did have a pretty robust economic incentive package that was offered for construction, new commercial real estate and business development construction that began between 2017 and 2019. It offered a rebate on municipal sales tax for 5 years, a rebate on property tax increments, a waiver on different things, deferrals of payments, and then a rebate of $1 per square foot payable upon issuance of certificate of occupancy. And we have 2 businesses that have came in under that, Vicious Cycle Brewery and Fraser Valley Distillery. In 2023, last fall, we brought back a new proposed Fraser business incentive package to be offered to new commercial construction. An annual rebate of 100% of the 4% municipal sales tax for 5 years with no cap, and then deferral of the payment of water and wastewater plant investment fees. Some of the thinking at the time was that we had gotten these great businesses. We hadn't seen a whole lot of movement in bringing in new businesses, and that there's a lot of development going on, but a lot of that development really seems geared towards residential. And in talking to developers, that's where they know they can make their money. We are now requiring mixed use development. We are requiring ground floor commercial. So we want to be able to make sure we can actually have successful businesses fill that commercial space, and we can actually have developers that build that development. So wanting to look at if it does make sense. Back when this was brought before the board last year, some board members wanted to see a more robust package. Some didn't think a package was needed. Some wanted more information. So we've taken this opportunity to kind of look more closely at what some other communities are doing and present you with some of those. Any questions about any of this? Great. So Granby, right next door to us, they have a similar business improvement grant program, similar to our facade program. One of the major differences is they have recently raised the amount of awards that the amount that you can get for a single project. And the thinking behind that was that they wanted to be able to do projects that would actually have a significant impact. It's gotten really expensive to do anything. So I don't know how far that kind of 7,500 goes that we offer. So they decided they would give fewer awards, but really focus on a couple critical projects. They've focused it along the Highway 40 kind of corridor with really the goal of encouraging pedestrian and business activity. So again, facade improvements, they do allow indoor improvements as well, pocket parks, landscaping. Another aspect that I think we should consider is energy efficiency improvements to businesses, outdoor seating, and then expanding area. But yeah, I would say the biggest difference with theirs is just the amount that they will give. Montrose was one of the communities that it was recommended that we look at, as they have a pretty robust package and offerings in terms of what they provide to businesses, both for current and new businesses. So similar, they also have a site improvement grant that again kind of focuses on curb appeal, sidewalks, landscaping, signage, blight removal, patios, other enhancements. Their amount is anywhere from $2,000 to $25,000. They also require a 50% match. They have a couple other programs that I thought were pretty cool. They have a commercial kitchen grant program. So they will pay to put in commercial kitchens. And they said they've gotten some pushback from people that are like, why are you giving these to private businesses? But they've decided as a community that they do not have the number of restaurants that they want for the size of their community. And that by providing commercial kitchens, even if that particular business does not stick around, that another restaurant would go in there once that commercial kitchen is there. So that's something that they've prioritized. They very much have a loose, malleable approach where they ask businesses to tell them what they need and what they want. And so this is something that's kind of grown out of that approach. Was that they had people wanting to establish kitchens, but that there was a lot of upfront cost there. So helping with that. They also offer a made in Montrose program. And so that is for anything that is made in Montrose, but shipped out of Montrose. So if somebody has a sock business where they make socks and they send them, if they put their little kind of label, their made in Montrose sticker on there, they will pay for half of their packaging or a portion of their packaging cost. So again, with the idea that this provides marketing and promotion for Montrose and provides kind of a small subsidy to these businesses. They have a revolving loan fund. They told me that that has not really been utilized much, but they do offer up to $20,000 for businesses at interest rates that are half of the prime rate. And those are typically paid back over 5 or 7 years. And then they do have business incentives for new businesses. And when I was talking with our economic development specialist, I was like, I really can't figure out from your website, like, what exactly are these incentives that you offer? And she's like, well, we asked them to tell us what they need. So again, a very flexible approach. What each business gets is different for each business. So they ask for a business plan. They want to know the jobs that are going to be created, the salaries that go with those jobs. They ask for projected sales and sales tax revenues. They want a site plan. They want project cost. So they do have a much more robust screening process than we've previously had for businesses. But then they really are willing to work with the businesses to try to help them kind of meet whatever gap they might need to help them be successful in terms of providing different services or incentives. Additionally, they will offer relocation expenses if companies are moving there. They'll help with building permit and tap fee abatement, office space, and then additional incentives considered on a case-by-case basis. Any questions?
I just wondered what kind of budget are they working with? I mean, what's their population? What's their mill levy? I mean,
Yeah,
really,
no, and I think we have to be appropriate to Fraser's size. I meant to look up their population before. We have a
yeah, but the mill
Yeah.
levy and
So let me find my notes here. They dedicated a certain portion of their sales tax to go back into the businesses some years back. So they do have that dedicated revenue source that goes towards it. They also have a URA, an urban renewal authority, that functions very similar to a downtown development authority with the tax increment financing. And that is basically, she said, the whole city. And that's been huge in providing funding for this too. And allowing them to work with businesses and form partnerships and provide some of these incentives. But they are a larger community than us. I want to say,
It's about
I was going
21,000.
to say 20,000. Thank you. Yeah,
20.
21,000. Yeah. So she said 15 years ago, they earmarked a certain portion of their sales tax. They partner with Region 10, who's kind of like our version, I guess, of Northwest COG. And so they provide the review of the business plans and a recommendation. They'll check their credit scores. So again, they kind of have that more formal review process. Questions? Which brings us to Silverthorne. Which again, I recognize they're a different community than Fraser. They're larger. They've got more of the, big box stores and additional to smaller businesses. But they established way back when, again, a portion of their sales tax that goes back into the downtown area and the businesses. And I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, this actually passed as part of a ballot initiative, and like childcare and something else are also thrown in there. But again, they have this kind of earmarked revenue source. And then they also have I believe it's a URA as well, and that tax increment financing they've been able to use to help fund some of this and to work with businesses. So any business that is new or expanding can apply to be included with this program. If they have sales tax revenue that will be generated of $5,000 or more. And back in 2011, they did lower that limit to be more inclusive of smaller businesses, and they allowed tenants in addition to property owners to be eligible. Similar to our facade business enhancement program, this started out as kind of a facade and public benefits. So things like sidewalks, landscaping, improving how the front of your building looks. But they have since defined public benefit much more broadly. So if it at all meets any of their different economic development goals, a big one being jobs being created. So if somebody is renovating an existing space, if they're filling a vacant space, that is all seen as a public benefit, and they will pretty much allow them to use that money to, build out that business and make those improvements to the property. They don't have a set amount. The examples they provided me for smaller businesses ranged from a sales tax rebate of about $8,700 up to the $2 million range for, a Target and a Lowe's. So they have some pretty big ones, and those are over kind of a set number of years. And generally they're getting 50% back of kind of a certain portion of their dedicated sales tax fund. So for the trustees, I did email you their economic development documents, and it kind of breaks down exactly how they do their calculations for their sales tax and the portion that they get back, but I won't get into the weeds on that here. So in addition to those incentives for new businesses, they do offer discounted advertising opportunities for their market programmings for marketing. They have their Silverthorne Energy Smart program, which offers assistance with technical energy and waste audits and recommendations for upgrades. They have really worked on the kind of their development review process and trying to make that really streamlined. They have a web-based project tracking system so people can see where, new commercial builds are at in the system. They may provide assistance with public infrastructure. Oh, and I skipped this slide. They also, for current businesses, again, have a very similar site enhancement program. And then their economic development grant is the one where they really catch kind of a broad spectrum of businesses. So any sort of capital investments which assist the town on overall economic development goals. So it could be something that they see as a unique amenity, a regional draw, addition to the vitality to the town core. Again, an increase in jobs. And so if a restaurant is expanding and they're going to add, an additional employee to cover that additional seating, that would count as a public benefit because it's meeting that economic development goal of providing more jobs. For these, the set maximum amount is $10,000. So those are kind of green lighted. And then if it's considered to be an exceptional benefit, it could be more, but they actually have a business grant application process that opens up every January for 6 weeks. In 2024, they allotted $50,000 towards these grants. And then that incentive package, which is paid back through the enhanced sales tax, is much more broad. So some of the key takeaways from these communities, as well as just other communities that I've spoken with, I went to the Downtown Development Conference in Durango that was put on by Downtown Colorado, Inc. that had a lot of the different downtown development authorities and urban renewal authorities from around the state, is that a lot of people do not have set economic incentive packages like we previously had. They're much more flexible offerings that they try to be malleable to what a particular business would need or request. And that also gives them the ability to prioritize. So it's not everybody gets the same thing. It's we really see this business as a good fit for our community and something that we want to have here. And so we're going to try to, cover the gap and meet the need that they have or provide them an incentive to attract them to come here. So not a one size fits all, just a lot of relationship building and conversations. Again, a lot of them are focusing on kind of where they maybe might have some more of those significant impacts. I don't know that a target is what we were looking for, but for Silver Thorn, that was something that they saw as a benefit to the community as well as a large source of sales tax. I mean, I have a friend in Steamboat who regularly drives down to Silverthorne to go to the Target because that's not available in Steamboat. So that was something where they were willing to offer a larger package to make it feasible that the Target would locate in Silverthorne. So with that, I'd just like to open it up to a discussion about what our economic development goals are for Fraser. Like, what would we like to see here? What would we like to prioritize? Thinking both about how to best support our current businesses. So if we want to look at our current business enhancement grant, and consider if we might want to expand that or what that might look like, as well as the question of if we want to attract new businesses that are the right fit for Fraser, with any sort of incentive offerings, or just provide that kind of open invitation. So I do have a couple more slides related specifically to the business enhancement grant and the incentives, but I would just love to hear your thoughts on kind of what you see as our economic development goals, what they should be, where our town priorities might lie in that regard, given where we're currently at and what we do have going on.
Do the other towns that kind of don't have a set incentive plan, do they run into any issues with fairness, distributing money?
Yeah, I think there are issues in making sure things seem above board, and I think you can get complaints. When I talked to Montrose, she said we have a lot of people that do push back, and they don't understand why we're giving this private business a kitchen and using taxpayer money. But again, they go back to, they look at their economic goals, and having more restaurants is one of them. They also have clearer kind of processes for vetting a business, and they've established criteria for what they want to prioritize. So I think that helps them kind of stand behind those decisions. But a lot of the language is that this is at the discretion of the board. Once programs are established, there tends to be, especially with like the smaller business grants, kind of a limit of, staff can green light anything that fits these criteria up to 10,000. And if somebody's looking for more, that would go in front of the board. With the larger economic incentive packages, I believe that in most cases, the board is approving those. Like town staff might work on them, but then they would approve them. We are statutory. Some of these communities are home rule, so they may have more flexibility in what they can offer. When we looked at this back in 2023, we know we can do sales tax rebates to individual businesses. And so we did write into our code back in 2023 that the board has the discretion to offer that. And we can defer, plant investment fees. So we could definitely further look into some other things, but there are some limitations as a statutory rule. He was asking if there's issues around, if people perceive issues around fairness. Okay, make sure your mics are on and you're speaking into your mic, trustees.
Okay.
Thank you, and Mayor.
It is. Yeah. I guess I'll speak up. I did talk to Sarah about an idea. This is slightly off topic, but you kind of mentioned it early on. Regarding the website, I would love to see a page that lists upcoming projects in Fraser. Just, where they're at, with the understanding that they are a work in progress. But, we were looking for the bike park layout the other day and we couldn't find it, for example.
Yes.
And, there's a lot of fun stuff, even what builders are doing in town. We would love to be able to promote that kind of stuff as it's in motion, because those are the questions that we're getting a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And with the bike park, that will be in front of the board likely now, probably July 17th. We're working with CPW to get them on board, hopefully. And then we'll be finalizing a bit of a redesign from what was presented to the board last year. But once we get that, our intention is to get that up on the website. But I agree, there's a lot on our website that needs to be updated, because we do have a page for that master plan for the Lions Ponds area, Cousins Ranch open space, and it just hasn't been updated in forever. So I think with that economic development, I've built out some of those pages and just need to pretty it up and finish some of it out and get out there. But I agree across the board. I think it's helpful for people to know where their tax money is going.
And even not their tax money, like what
Yeah,
people, what
just what's
private
happening.
entities are doing in town as well.
Yeah,
would be-
I
would
think
be
that
great
makes
to
sense.
promote.
We can talk about that.
So I guess just to be clear, we don't have a specific list of criteria that we're looking for new businesses or that we're requiring.
We
Is
don't.
that something we need to create? That's what you're suggesting? Okay.
Yeah.
And some level of kind of gap analysis as far as what type of commercial is in demand here that maybe is underserved here. Is something that the comprehensive plan firm with Cushing Terrell is looking into as well. And see what would make sense as far as trying to draw certain types of industry here. For example, there's been discussions about trade industry, light industry coming to the valley that could be of value. But that's something that they have on their radar that they're working on as well, which will complement these efforts for sure.
Another gap that's been identified at the county level is hotels. So they're looking at some of that too, but we could definitely do a more in-depth analysis of businesses that are lacking.
And I would just say location too. I mean, you have some areas that are right on Highway 40, which is great visibility, but we're doing this major initiative to look at Clayton Court and trying to give this type of Main Street feel that doesn't have the visibility that Highway 40 has, right? So there could be some incentive there to help maybe offset some risk that a commercial interest could have for that area.
I think the other thing too to look at is, I mean, there's a lot of businesses in town that probably don't know about our current incentive program to update the facade. That we could target and promote like, hey, did you know we have $7,500 matching
Right.
if you'd like to paint or do something.
Yeah, I
Revenue
agree.
is
And
current.
we've had it for a while and I think it could be better marketed. We've had some businesses take advantage of it, but honestly, we've had money left over most years and that money's gone towards other things that have been fit in there, but in terms of like its original intention. I mean, on that segue, one of the things that I was hoping to discuss is just what we want the focus and purpose of that to be. Do we want it to keep it kind of just on that public facing facade kind of curb appeal? Capital infrastructure improvements, a lot of, the way Silverthorne had originally written their tax rebate incentive program was you would get your sales tax back to do public improvements, which I thought was kind of a neat concept, right? Like, they're improving the sidewalk, they're putting in additional public parking or, pretty street lights, whatever it may be. But other categories that we could possibly look at expanding our grants to would be kind of energy efficiency upgrades. Particularly, we've got a lot of older buildings that probably could stand to improve in terms of energy efficiency and sustainability. Some of our older buildings still don't have great ADA accessibility. Some of our sidewalks could use some help with that, some of our lack of sidewalks. So again, if we have businesses that are willing to be partners in these things and make these things happen, do we help them with funding for that? Do we want to look at additional public benefits, again, beyond kind of the facades? And how far do we want to stretch that definition? If they're doing different things to help activate the downtown area. And those are some of the different areas that we've seen other communities kind of focus on. So again, I think it really is defining kind of what do we want economic development to be here in Fraser? What do we want these grants to focus on? Do we want to up the award amount and allow people to apply for larger awards? Or do we feel like 7,500 is still an appropriate amount?
You said we don't go through our whole 75,000, I think it said $75,000 budget a year. How much have we gone through in the last few years?
It's varied from year to year. We've been able to take from that budget, hopefully I'm not misspeaking, but I believe the chamber, we pulled from that because we traditionally have had money left over. Fraser River Brewing Company, I think, is the only applicant we've had this year for improvements thus far.
And that's the new like decking area did out front.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So is there a list available of what we've given businesses, which businesses have gotten grants in the past 5 years or whatever?
Yeah, I was pulling that together and we'll say we did not have the cleanest list. But we could definitely provide that. These are some of the different businesses. So I know like Black Tie, I believe, is the one that used it to kind of pave a parking lot. They've been some different exterior improvements. I don't know if any of our business owners here that have gotten them want to speak to.
We've never applied for one, so if we've gotten one, I don't know about it.
Didn't have an application, but you were on our list, so I'll look into
I was
that.
kind of wondering about mine too. I'm
I
going,
have not gotten-
Okay,
That was
Was it
actually
the-
Crooked Creek.
yeah, that was Crooked Creek.
it was Crooked
Right.
Creek. Okay.
I was like, was
Uh-huh.
that a COVID? Like, what was that? I'm like,
No, in all
remember
honesty, I was
that.
planning to provide you just that. And when I was looking into it, we had some information that needs to be reconciled.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I mean, if I look at this list, there's not a lot of diversity there. It's all alcohol related almost. I mean, shouldn't we be trying to attract other things, I mean, I'm not opposed to alcohol, but it's like, that's all we're spending our money on.
Like we need some retail.
but it's mostly patios and
Other businesses that, would create a more diverse community than just bars
Right.
and.
Well, Louis, I think that's a great example of, if we're offering economic incentives, we want to offer economic incentives that, maybe a priority is a non-alcoholic establishment that provides something to do in the evening.
Serve alcohol, a higher end restaurant or, some other businesses on, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that, you were saying a dry cleaner. I mean, I don't know what businesses we want to attract from Fraser,
nail
but
salon.
there's other things other than just bars, wineries, distilleries.
Right. And again, I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of the communities don't have a set package that everybody gets. This is something that would be unique. This is something that we want. So we are going to incentivize this business. Granby doesn't have a set incentive program, but the Sun River development, I mean, they're getting a hefty sales tax rebate. Granby Ranch gets a hefty sales tax rebate. So a lot of these communities just kind of have one-offs for, again, the right business that they see really providing something for the community.
So what does the board think about having a deadline for when we want applications for the business enhancement grant to help better advertise it and market it and show what you could do with it and potentially increasing the cap for that amount? And so, we just recently started doing the donor advised funds where we have a bucket of money that has a cap on it and we receive the applications for that amount. We say, here's a desired amount that we would like to see, but it could vary, right? Based on the need or the value to the community. I mean, we could have the same approach for this business enhancement grant. That way we're using at least the full allocated amount that's budgeted because we're not even really hitting that. And I don't think $7,500 was what it was, 5 years ago. I don't know what you can really do for $7,500 nowadays, but
So increasing the amount and lowering the volume of grants, right?
Or we
Make
could
it,
keep it at $75,000 budget, but have up it to like $15,000
yeah,
or something.
I agree. I think $7,500 is not enough to get people's attention.
right.
But it's a match, so it's I mean, you put in your own 75 and you get 75, right?
Right.
Okay,
It's a
100.
$15,000
So, I mean, 50
project, but
doesn't
still, I
But they
think
still have to put in 7,500 of their own money.
correct.
So it'd be a $23,000 project.
Well, if they just matched the 75, it would be 15K for the whole project, is what I'm saying. But either way, I agree with you guys that maybe we just don't put a cap on it. We just see what comes in and we decide what is going to be the biggest value to the town.
Do a match program up to a certain amount, like match up to 10K or match up to 8,000. That way you're incentivizing them to use their money and your money.
Right. Well, and it is a match.
Giveaway.
Right.
Right. We currently require a 50% match. And that seems to mirror what a lot of communities are doing. Silverthorns, I believe, was worded that a 50% match would be prioritized, but isn't necessarily required.
That makes sense.
Yeah, no, I like
That
that.
makes sense. Not
Then-
required.
Right.
And then kind of, we can kind of look at it and see what the return on investment for the town is gonna be, is this a worthy project?
I really like
We
the
really want it.
outdoor stuff, but I mean, really, let's be realistic. It's 8 weeks.
I can't hear you.
Like the outdoor stuff's great, but I mean, realistically, our summer's 8 weeks on. Like
Right.
it's like,
There you go.
you know,
Yeah.
It might be that we have a deadline of October 1st, and that way the money is budgeted and allocated for the following summer. So it's ready, it's in their bank accounts in May, and they can get going,
Yeah.
you know?
I'm
Yeah.
saying like spending all the money on stuff that's good for summer, like, like
Patios.
patios
Right.
and stuff like that. We should be doing like more signage and paint and like
Yeah.
signage is huge and signs are expensive.
Yeah.
Katie, I did see when I was in Durango, I'll send you a link. I should have put a slide. They had these like modular patios that they developed during COVID, but they're supposedly super durable, really easy to take up, to set up and take down. But one of the benefits I saw, because I go to these places and I was like, I wish we had these patios, but then I come back to like how many months a year. But
Right.
they actually had them across sidewalks and they might take up some of the street parking for the summer months, and then they would put them away for the winter.
Mhm.
So it was a way to kind of put some money into having those patios for the summertime, which I think, I mean, if I'm in a mountain community, I want to be on a patio on a nice day in the summer versus
Right.
inside. But it didn't take up that permanent space. So then you get those
That's
parking
cool.
spaces
It's like
back or
what
whatever for
Wake and
the
Bacon
winter
does that,
season.
don't they?
Mhm.
We can make
Well-
something like that.
Yeah, I've seen that in New York City too. They have those like kind of.
I think they popped up in a lot of places over COVID. But yeah, I can send out that link.
That'd be good too, designated snow removal spot in the winter and then a patio in the summer. Like,
Exactly. Yeah, it gives you more of that seasonal flexibility. So it sounds like there's some thoughts that we would want to go up in amount.
Yep.
Do I have a number?
Could I make a comment that kind of like wrap together the earlier part of the conversation and the incentive? If you remember a few years ago, we did a survey of residents. Asked, what are you looking for in Fraser? What are your pros on it? Got really good response. Why don't we do a survey of all the existing businesses and ask them similar questions? How are things going? What are you facing? What are your challenges? Did you know that we have a business incentive grant program? If we expand it, what might you use it for? And we could probably come up with a lot of questions, not too many, but I think that we don't have a really good methodology of businesses giving the board and the town staff a lot of input. We all just either go to work and nose the grindstone or talk some among ourselves. Maybe if we do that, we'll get some really helpful information. And it might address Lewis's question, which I'll get to in a second. And B, it'll inform everybody there is a program that could give you feedback. Maybe say, if you did some improvement, what might it cost? As far as not having businesses that aren't alcohol related, I think all the alcohol related ones are also restaurants. What I tell you is in this community, retail is very difficult. It's not just Fraser. If you look at what's going on in Winter Park, it's almost all restaurant, bars, etc. There are some retail. Clark Scott, when I've seen it successful, very painful. It's what? Very painful. Okay, I assume wrong. I think that proves my point.
Which retail are you talking about?
The.
Yeah,
restaurant.
What? The
Mike Sports, Ski Roller.
Oh, right,
And
right.
it's huge. But retail is difficult. And I think for in that kind of survey, ask those, if your restaurants, what issue is facing, if you're a more traditional retail, how are things going? What are you facing? It's tough.
Yeah. No, and I think that's something we could easily wrap into the community engagement that's going to be happening around the town comprehensive plan. Yeah.
Quick on it, sir.
Yep.
The point that sticks out here to me that one really touched on is the average stay of a visitor in Fraser, Queens, 1.3 days.
Yeah.
It's not good, guys. And for existing businesses and attracting new businesses, I would be focused on what do we need to be doing differently to get people to stay here longer? Because that's what's going to drive the economy, drive new development and construction, and help grow everybody else's existing businesses. And I don't think it's worth glossing over the fact that 1.3 days is what the average visitor spent in our town. That's not a good statistic.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Well,
most of
where
them
that-
come
how
from
did that-
Denver area.
How'd
Sorry.
you derive that? Cause that seems kind of crazy.
They use cell phone data
And it could be-
from a certain
it
percentage
wouldn't
of cell
feel that
phones.
True, that it's not very representative of people that are actually.
Supposedly they have to be here more than a certain amount of time to, it's something I'm trying to better understand exactly how they do the data, but they have to be here a certain amount of time. It's based on a certain percentage of cell phones whose data they can track.
Clark's point well taken, but.
Yeah.
I think 1.3 days is not.
No, and I would
People
say,
who come here and stay aren't, leaving
Right.
after 1.3 days.
and I feel like a lot of communities and economic development is focused around kind of building up experiential retail. Like, what can you do to get people to come and spend money while doing an activity, something like a golf simulator, for example. Or a bookshop that has, evening book clubs or, things that get people to come and spend time in an activity versus just trying to sell them a product.
Abby's had her hand up for a little while.
I'm not.
Can y'all
unmute her?
hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Abby.
Hey, y'all were talking and I was like so eager to jump in. Well, I wanted to retreat back to like the conversation about the grant because I was a recipient of a grant in Winter Park and I had an architect do a whole vision for an exterior, I guess you could call it like a gazebo patio thing that could be used for a certain amount of time. And in my development and my expansion of the store, I hit a point where I couldn't match the requested match because I had already spent my expenditures on the renovations. So just, talking about that grant opportunity, I felt like and I didn't go to the town of Winter Park to ask because I was like landsliding into some things that I didn't foresee, such as pregnancy and COVID. But I just felt like it was really hard for me to get the full vision because I couldn't match it, and two, I was against the elements on that construction. Just putting my 2 cents on that. So not putting it to the business owner to match that, because when you're starting a new business and you might be small, you might not have that liquidity. Right. And then the other thing is y'all are diving into the experiences. The reason I got that grant, it was because the store was all about providing those experiences and the trade skill, like attracting people from other states by bringing popular artists or reputable people that teachers and educators that people would want to learn from, which I know the higher education department has worked on in economic development. I'm not remembering her name, but that was at the Headwater Center. And so she does more like higher education classes. So I took that sort of programming and I put it into artistry. And it was hard. It was really hard to get a solid revenue stream on it really is the summer months when people want to come up for that type of experience. So I don't know if I'm babbling now, but that's just where I wanted to say I have a lot of experience on trying to create that type of retail plus experience. And it's not a shoe-in because we just don't have that population coming in. I don't know if I heard whoever was speaking from the crowd, but retail is very challenging because of where we are globally in retail sales.
Alrighty.
Okay,
Thank you,
that's
Abby.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we only have a few more minutes. I think some of it is how do we think creatively? We've tossed around the idea just amongst ourselves of like incubator spaces that could potentially help small businesses kind of try things out, and maybe get started on a cheaper amount than if they're paying for a full lease for themselves. I've seen, some businesses in some places where there was a new place that opened up in Denver, and it was 3 food trucks that combined in one small restaurant space. So there's a bakery there in the morning, and it was a wonton shop later in the day. And so, you have people operating at different times of the day, sharing one lease and, paying one rental price versus a bakery trying to make it, off of a morning shift. So I think there are different ways we can be creative, but I think it is challenging.
I love the idea of the supporting Made in Fraser
I was just gonna
and
say that.
encouraging entrepreneurs, having that as, bump them up on the priorities and for levels of funding. Because
Absolutely.
entrepreneurs usually being new businesses.
Okay.
Right you had something.
Yeah, good. Wondering about how much you put into a fund for this. I just want to remind you that the businesses are the highest paying taxes, both through land tax and sales tax back to the community. So the more we can produce better businesses and businesses that are thriving, the more likely we'll get a better return. So,
All right.
Think that into your concept when you're being conservative about how much you want to help the small businesses in town.
Maybe looking at a percentage of our sales tax rate, if not dedicated for us to work with and to put in and dedicate to that fund. Good point.
So
I
on
kinda
that
think
note,
there were kind of, in my mind, 4 separate business areas in Fraser, like downtown, Safeway, Murdoch's, and then Grand Park. And they probably have all different priorities and different needs, and we need to take that into consideration. And Barry's pointed out maybe doing a survey, we get too carried away doing surveys, but we need to recognize that they may have different needs, and we may have to, adjust it based on, where they're located and what their needs are.
yep.
It's not all about downtown.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, there's going to be some benefits to businesses, hopefully, that are within the GDA boundaries, but then there will be some businesses that fall outside of those boundaries that we still want to be, for lack of a better word, taking care of or considering, how they contribute to the community and what their needs might be in terms of helping to support them. So again, we do just have a few minutes. I would like a couple concrete things to be able to bring back to the board for consideration. So if we can talk for one more minute about the business enhancement grant, and then maybe talk about the incentives for new businesses. So what I am hearing with the business enhancement grant is that we are open to going up in amount, that maybe there be some flexibility with a match requirement.
I think we should require a match. don't we?
So, some kind of match,
Yeah,
but
Some sort of contribution.
Yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't have
Gotta
to
be
be.
matched.
doesn't have to be 50%, right?
If it was a new business, and you're doing like the 4% tax back, could you work that in, like they don't have to match it up front, but they don't get that 4% back?
Well, let's talk about that with the new business incentives, because that'll kind of be a different pot, as I see it. So here we have a required match, but some flexibility around what that match would be, and looking at possibly increasing the amount. Katie has thrown out prioritizing entrepreneurship and small businesses. Again, some of that, if they're newer, might fit into that new business category. What about some of these different areas, like going beyond the facade kind of curb appeal improvements? Do we want to include things like energy updates, improving ADA accessibility? Do we want to expand how we think about public benefit in terms of what we allow to come under these grants?
I think ADA is important
Okay.
Yeah.
for this community.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily think the energy is in this, it's important, but I don't think it's in this grant. I don't think it's for this grant. I
Right.
think There's other grants for that.
People aren't gonna drive down the road and say, "Oh, look at those windows."
Look at those energy efficient windows, like,
Yeah.
I think there's other grants for that.
Yeah, but if we've got somebody in a wheelchair that's trying to get around town, wants
Oh,
to
and then
spend
Yeah,
energy
yeah.
efficiency.
ADA is all,
ADA
yeah,
up for
we
it.
agree on that one, for
Yeah.
sure.
But I think the energy efficient, there may be other grants for that.
Okay.
Parks,
Yeah.
did you?
The guidelines, like what happened to Abby,
she spent all this money, she could prove that she just spent that money within a certain amount of days, and that could qualify as a percentage of the match. Yeah,
Oh, could go in the rears, kinda?
yeah.
Arrears, the arrears, arrears.
Look, okay, cool, it did improve the business, you were setting this up, we're
Yeah.
gonna consider that your match.
That's a good idea.
And I've seen
Yeah.
that in some of the
That's a
grant
good idea.
applications I've completed,
There you
it's the
go.
actual
That's your
project
expense.
cost and then kind of the overall value.
And also with.
So we've already put this money in, right?
Like, did you do that 4 months ago? Okay, cool, well then you're not talking in business, maybe we can't give you that, maybe you can match this. Right, right.
And that might help finish projects that couldn't really be completed if they got started and were like, oh, no, we don't have enough to finish.
Right.
Okay.
Or something like that.
I think having some flexibility in this plan is a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, and we can put together kind of a draft grant program based on this information and you can continue to kind of consider what you'd like to see in it. So we don't need to finalize it all now. So we can bring that back in front of the board for further discussion before coming back with a finalized program for approval.
Wonderful.
Great.
So we can quickly try to talk about new business incentives. Is this something we would like to offer? Do we want to provide that open kind of invitation of bring us your business plan, tell us what you need? You know, these are things that we would like to consider and maybe prioritize.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to.
Yeah.
We're doing all this expansion.
But the difference between what we advertised before was really just, there was some level of like kind of demonstration of need versus being able to have some flexibility and saying we're open, we want to hear what your ask is, we want to look at, you know, how can we bring you to Fraser? Let's have that conversation, have a process they need to go through as far as providing relevant information, just like she's listed here, as far as fit for Fraser, what the town's looking for, what the community needs, you know, jobs that are provided, how it's going to draw in maybe new people to the region, different types of industry, you know, business plan, all those good things. Your pro forma, what you're looking to bring, what your anticipated costs and revenues are, and how we can help support that and ultimately draw you to Fraser instead of somewhere else.
Just thinking, do we have a program that we're actually actively seeking businesses from other communities? Like, I'm just thinking, I just took a tour through Southwest Colorado, Cortez, Durango, Pagosa Springs, Salida, kind of looking around, seeing what businesses are there, what's working in their community. Are they interested in expanding to another, town within Colorado? Do we have any way of seeking out businesses that may be willing to, open up shop here in Fraser?
I mean, yeah, I think this would be a piece of it. You know, if we have that information out there. Again, we have to work within the staff resources we have, but that puts us in a better position to have those conversations. And again, I think the DDA, once it gets up and running, can play a role. I also were a member of Downtown Colorado Inc., and they do have a number of different conferences. That was the conference I was at in Durango, but I think it'd be great for, a trustee or two to get involved with some of those as well. Because they're great at seeing what other communities are doing and what they're struggling with and where their successes are.
I think, and it's prioritizing what it is that we don't have and what
Yeah.
we need.
I think we want to wrap it up for the workshop. But did you have anything else, Sarah?
So the direction I'm being given, would you guys like us to come back with a kind of structured idea for an open invitation for things like sales tax rebates and? Okay,
Yeah, I think we can
You do
demonstrate what we
such good
provide in the
work.
past.
thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right.
All right.
Thanks for everybody's input. I really appreciate you guys all being here. It was awesome.
Awesome workshop.
Yeah, that was really
I
good.
do just want to share that this photo, it was an old car wash, like one of those do-it-yourself car washes, and they turned it in. Each bay was for a different restaurant, so it was an incubator restaurant space. I thought was super cool.
Yeah. All right. So we will start the meeting in 25 minutes.
Okay. Well,
Similar to